Ladies and gentlemen, it is 9 a.m. on the West Coast. It is 10 a.m. in Boulder, Colorado. It is 10 a.m. in Seattle. And it is currently 7 p.m. here in Vilnius, Lithuania. We have a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful lineup of speakers for you today. From Boulder, we have Amanda Sage joining us, regenerative artist extraordinaire, amazing, amazing visual artist, and as she sometimes says, she's an artivist. And we also have Aaron Huey. The best description for what he does came from his lips a couple of minutes ago in the same room. He described himself as a positive propagandist. He's also a photographer, journalist for National Geographic, and he is the head creator of Amplifier, something that we will be talking about a little bit later, but it is an exceptional example of how artists can affect practical, pragmatic, and tangible change in this reality of ours. Also joining us from San Francisco is Amanda Joy Ravenhill. And ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to RE&CO Radio, and the theme for today is Regenaissance and Co-Amplify. This conversation will be about how artists can bring about sharing visions, how they can incept newly imagined positive visions of realities. And we'll be talking about how to incept them in the minds of others. So with no further ado, I would like to open the floor. And as always, I would like to get a beautiful intro hello from our co-host, Amanda Joy Ravenhill, Executive Director of the Buckminster Fuller Institute.
Always a pleasure to join you all on the airwaves every Wednesday morning here, West Coast time. We at the Buckminster Fuller Institute had the honor of co-hosting the Re-Genaissance at Art Basel. It was an event, but really a marker in time of this era that we're in. History doesn't always exactly repeat, but I'm pretty sure it rhymes. And the Renaissance was born of coming out of and emerging from the bubonic plague and the darkness of that, and a hastening in the speed of technology and art and coming back to natural sciences. And here we are emerging from this pandemic and pointing to and seeing the role of artists, and again coming back to those natural sciences. And so we're blending regenerative intelligence, this ecological literacy, this ancient wisdom traditions of being in tune with nature's genius, of learning from the 3.8 billion years of research and development that nature has done in order to take the technology that we've built. And as Fuller said, we'll build all the right tools for all the wrong reasons first. So it's just the task at hand is to translate what so much of our technology has been designed for, weaponry, and translate it into livingry. And the role of the artist in that cannot be understated to help us envision and amplify those stories. And so it's just such an honor to have both Aaron and Amanda here to jam on that today, and really looking forward to all of you opening up your worlds into their work and helping amplify their amplification.
All right.
Isn't it a good one? History does not necessarily repeat itself, but it rhymes. It has a certain funky, repetitive procession. Ain't that curious? So maybe let's begin with that interesting example. Let me ask the two of you. Whoever wants to go first, just go lunge at the mic and let us know what you think. But let me ask you about those historic rhymes that inspire you. What are you taking from the past or from previous heroes of yours that are informing what you're doing today? And how are you jamming with that? How are you using those rhymes from the past to create a new future that will last?
That's a big one to start with. Aaron, do you have
You have something?
You start the rhyming. I'll jump in after you.
Rhyming. Wow. Well, I the first thing that came to mind was The Peace Train, which is a song, that was predicting a time beyond this time. Out on the edge of darkness, there rides the peace train. And talking of a movement, that was started long ago and I think has been rippling through time and through movements and continents, and as necessity arises, people rise, and really think about what is important, what makes them tick, what makes life really truly beautiful. And art is one of those things that is at that forefront. We're all artists in some way, and when we find the things that really make us light up inside, we become so much more alive. And I don't know about you, but I really like being around people that are alive. And I feel like alive people have a real gift, have more capacity, I think, to give. And I think we're in a time where we need to practice that as much as possible and be examples for that. So there's this kind of like, I feel we're in a historical wave of what the Re-Genaissance really is bringing now, and the art and the music and the storytellers, we're all riffing off of all those that came before us, with new technologies and new ways of connecting.
I like that. I like the lineage, because when I think of the rhymes of the past, for me, they're visual. The stories of our elders and of the lineage that we came from as visual creators. I collect as I see new visuals and evolve those subconsciously, I think, over time. And what comes out is it is from those elders. It's from that, all of those rhymes of the past, of what has been made before us.
This is really beautiful. I think the idea of rhymes from the past is a good angle. But also, Amanda, you mentioned something which is lighting a fire in my imagination. The idea of comparing the act of being properly alive with practicing creativity, with being creative. I like to sometimes cite or reference certain biblical or one biblical citation in particular, where they say that we were made in the likeness of the Creator. And so the likeness of the Creator doesn't mean that we're going to have certain physical characteristics or mental characteristics which make us like the Creator, but that we are creators as well. And so I like this idea that, as artists, as creative human beings, that the quality of life, our lives, not just artists, is somehow defined by our ability to be creative in a positive manner.
I definitely feel something nourishing that happens when I do something, not because I just have to do it, but I do it because I feel really inspired to do it. And there's a different kind of there's a different kind of fuel there that comes through, right? It's like you tap into some other access point energetically.
I wish it always felt nourishing. Sometimes it doesn't feel nourishing. Sometimes it feels like a lightning strike. And I was thinking about that where we all met in Miami at Art Basel, because it felt like we were in some kind of like giant vineyard of interconnected vines that was also like a lightning field with lightning rods sticking up everywhere. It was that kind of energy. Like it was an incredible mix of nourishing, but also just like fire too.
Totally. that fire though, I need to get close to the fire sometimes to really feel alive. And I felt that too in Miami. And I think it was the combination too of having not been together in that way for so long, and also so many people meeting for the first time. I've never had that experience of feeling like I knew some of these like humans, but I'd never actually been in the same place as them. And so to be like, wow, you know, you're this tall, you're this, you know, the size of people, right? Because on Zoom or on, you can't really tell. And that electricity of sharing space together, it's like, there's something about the preconceptions that one can have, or all the thoughts that one can have about somebody, but when you're in the presence with them, all of that kind of dissolves, and you're with this magical, mysterious creature, you know? And you're sharing space, and that's beautiful, and there's so much more that can be exchanged. And that's why, like, that call went out, you know, what, like 2 weeks before? It was like a really short call to action, right? To come show up. And it was one of those things where I was like, oh no, all these things were telling me, no, I got so many other things to do. But I had other people that had no idea what I was maybe going to be getting myself into. And they were just like, Amanda, you need to go.
I'm thinking, Amanda, do you think that you could give a little bit of context for our listeners as to what exactly happened at Art Basel about 2 weeks ago? What was that all about? Because I know exactly what Amanda and Aaron are talking about, but I think our listeners might be a little bit confused and not really know what this whole thing about the Re-Genaissance and how that has to do with Art Basel and everything. I know that nobody can explain it better than you. You want to give us a little bit of context?
You calling on Amanda Joy or Amanda Sage?
I'm calling on the Joy.
I'm the Joy. Yeah, so I forget who originally said it, but I really love this metaphor that the Re-Genaissance was a Trojan horse of sorts within Art Basel. So it was a 3-day event with a speaker symposium, an artist salon, live paintings, an immersive theatrical farm-to-table dinner, and a celebration, really highlighting ecological wisdom and this idea of returning to ecological wisdom. So not just, the next step in our evolution is to come back, is to be with nature, but really recognizing that so many indigenous and ancient wisdom traditions have done that for millennia. And it was a showcase for the artists in the Design Science Studio, which is one of the premier programs of Buckminster Fuller Institute. It's an incubator program for artists. Amanda Sage has been one of our artists for our first cohort. And it provides curriculum, teaching artists more about everything from biomimicry to social justice to futurism, and then uniting them in a common community in order to amplify their work and boost them and accelerate them as artists in this critical time. So it was a showcase for all of those artists. And as Amanda Sage shared, it was the first time we got together in the 18 months of the program. And it was just such a delight to be able to connect and see one another's work from a different, in-person point of view. And it was co-hosted by a really incredible group called Future of Cities, which is dedicated to impacting the lives of 1 billion people in cities in the next decade, and really focusing on those who have been underserved in the past. And so we brought together leaders, Deepak Chopra and Adrienne Grenier, and all sorts of people from all over the world who have visions and are amplifying, again, this vision of a future that works for all. And it's just the beginning. We'll do another Re-Genaissance definitely next year in Art Basel. There's conversations of having them throughout the year at various events. But it's an opening within these larger events to bring people back to this ecological literacy in order to, come into tune with nature, but also how does that play into social justice issues and, looking at the full regenerative scope of the world. So yeah, that's what we were up to.
My interpretation of it, My interpretation of it is that Amanda and Roxy have been curating amazing human beings, artivists that have a little bit of substance, a little bit of transformational social pivoting kind of substance. And they brought them all to Basel, and one person was more amazing than the next. And I think up where you start wondering, how is it that these lovely human beings that not only are aesthetically and artistically proficient, also have such a deep sense of devotion to what they're doing? And I get that from both Aaron and from Amanda Sage as well. But let's try to move back into this conversation. Let's try and pick at some. Let's see if we can find some nuggets or some nuggets of wisdom, some gems of perspective from each of you. Let me ask a little bit. Let me ask Aaron a little bit about your approach and this relationship that you have with the artist and the activist, because I know that it's one that's fraught. It's one that has a little bit of tension.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, anything worth doing has got some tension because it's generally exposes like wounds, and we're working in spaces where people are, where there's a lot of pain. I didn't plan to do this kind of work. I've kind of never had a plan. It's why I talk about it like as lightning strikes. I immerse myself in places and I see a story that is not moving in the world or that needs to be told, and I start making it with the tools that I have at my fingertips, and that keeps changing shape. I didn't mean to make a nonprofit. Amplifier became a nonprofit eventually, but where do we go with this? This can go a lot of ways. Poke me a little bit. I need to be poked sometimes.
Let me poke you. Let's take that question.
Yeah, let's do it.
Why do you refuse to be labeled as an activist when you're clearly a person who's all about bringing positive change through art to the world?
Yeah, I think it's because over the last 5 years, the tumultuous years, the word activism has been associated with, to me, echo chambers and a kind of polarity that does not represent the interdependent vision of the world that I think we're moving towards. I see a lot of what happened in the activist, in quotes, space really helping to shred the social fabric of America. 1% speaking to about 10%. And I'm from a really small town in Wyoming. And I want to make stories and imagery, and what we call compasses in the work that we make, that those people can hold or understand and have a conversation with as well. And I find that within communities that label themselves as activists, that they are not speaking to those communities. And I think we're in a different time and we can't do that anymore.
I agree with that. I agree with the fact that there is polarization involved. We had a beautiful guest, Benjamin Van Wong, on the show a couple of weeks back, and he described an activist basically as a person who is pretty much as a person who's active and who understands that change is not a destination, it's just a position you're taking. But informed by what you're saying is that if you take a position basically to be reactionary in nature, then you can't really engage as full-heartedly and as holistically as would probably wanted, right?
Yeah, and there are times there were times where the art had to be used as a shield or a weapon because it was that kind of moment. We were in the trenches. There was a real fight happening. But I think now we're in a different kind of moment. So maybe I shouldn't be afraid of the word activist, but yeah.
Amanda, what do you? I know you have an opinion on this.
Well, it's really, it's such an interesting place to jump from. And I feel that where I focus, where I enjoy really putting my focus and feel useful, feel like I'm contributing to a part of the solution, is considering what would it look like, you know, what is it like if we are living in the world we know we're capable of creating. Mm-hmm. And so the tool set that I have, you know, is I learned how to paint, and I learned how to paint the natural world, and I learned really classical techniques, and to fall in love with painting what I saw. And so when I just went a little bit further along and was like, okay, well, what do I really want to see beyond, mm-hmm. you know, the world that I see around me? Because sometimes, man, it just is it's pretty messed up. You know, there's a lot of beauty and there's a lot of dysfunction. And so I found that it's kind of like an interesting magic trick to use painting in that way. And then also to teach others skills so that they could express what they were interested in seeing. So in many ways, it's kind of like building a library or building a storyboard, you know, of possibilities for other people to see and maybe in a way fall into, to adopt, to realize, you know, take a piece of that and riff off of it, you know. Mm-hmm. But where do we pull it from? Where does it come from? You know, we got to get into a place of not being too concerned or overly concerned of everything that's going wrong. You know, we have to make ourselves available to what it would look like, you know? What's the solar punk vision? You know, rather than the dystopian one.
Yes, we're perfectly in alignment on that. I love what you said, like how do we make art that is what we want to see in the world? And that's, I think, in Miami, what I talked about when I was on stage there, we talked about making those compasses. And mm-hmm. you make those compasses also for the layers of vision that we're just blind to, that are already there. And I think that it's what we try to do at Amplifier, is to make those compasses that point to the world that we want to live in, the world that we want to see. It's why we build campaigns that are called things like We the Future, because it's literally visioning the future that we want to live in and providing a roadmap to getting there by putting the people and the movements forward to show exactly what it looks like to move in that direction and to embody that new world.
What do you see? What's the big vision for Amplifier beyond what you're already doing, which is greatly effective?
I think sometimes it's just to continue to saturate the space around us so we can't not see the paths, so that we can't not see these compasses. Sometimes I forget the effect of what's happening until I see a post where somebody is photographing something we put up 5 years ago in a classroom and talking about its daily impact on a classroom of students, that's sitting for its 5th year in that classroom.
Yeah.
So I think that when I don't know exactly where we're supposed to go, I know that we're supposed to just keep doing the work and putting it out there and making sure that it just keeps transmitting.
Right. And you'll never know all the ripples, and that doesn't really matter. I'm curious how many works, do you have a read on how many pieces have been disseminated through Amplifier this past year, 2021?
2021, definitely in the millions of physical works. And I think that physicality matters. A lot of people in our space, I hear people talking about impressions and digital impressions and all this stuff. And I kind of don't believe those numbers. People talk about the billions and tens of billions of impressions. But there is something very different about analog work and how it lives in the world and how it transmits, that it can't be swiped away. And I think about it especially in like the classroom setting is the one example I come back to over and over again. If like there's a dozen works, a dozen compasses on the wall of a classroom, and they are there for 5 years or more, and all those classes come through and those students see that every single day, they are subconsciously transmitting like that vision every day, all day. It's not a thing in the noise of your phone that gets swiped away. So those millions, even though it's only millions and not billions, those millions of physical pieces never stop transmitting. And so for all the digital hype, we will never stop making the physical objects.
Yes. I'm so happy to hear that, because I feel I've been making stickers, for an example, of my paintings for many years. And I love to give these stickers, which they're high quality stickers. They're not small, and they're, you know, the best I can find. And I like to give them to people. I don't necessarily give them so much if I like there to be some kind of an exchange where it seems like this person would actually appreciate it, right? But like as a, you know, in an Uber driver, you know, or at a restaurant with somebody that I feel like I connected with, I like to give currency in multiple ways, you know, and not just in that way. But I know that these little stickers, you know, I don't have a bunch of branding on them, or it's really about the image. And that image, you can put it on anything and it's with you. It's a portal. It's that the frequency and the prayer and the everything about what that work is with that person, and with it can be anywhere and not just on the digital screen. Because I love having met somebody that is like, oh, I have had your painting on as my phone background, you know, for 6 years, you know, show me this. And that's like, that's an impactful thing, right?
Yeah.
They look at it so much, but then like a physical object on a physical thing, you know, and to give a child this and be like, put this on something that's really special to you.
Oh yeah.
You know,
do you spend time putting them around out in the world on things?
Yes, I do, but I still probably not enough, like in the last year or so. But I would love to, like, I'm so inspired by what you guys do, and I would love to, I really want to adopt more of the practices that are at the forefront of your purpose, you know, with Amplifier, and bring that into our community of the Vision Train and this network and this collective that is really about creating work that is going to help fuel the Re-Genaissance. You know, that's the call to action in many ways when the Vision Train started. And so let's, like, you know, to really fundraise, to make the stickers, to give away, you know, that's what you guys are doing, you know?
Yeah. I wish I had found stickers even earlier. I started teaching my children stickering quite early. I try to carry stickers with me everywhere to put inside of newspaper stands and on the backs of parking signs. And there's an art to placing the sticker. But I remember thinking about, there was one case where I realized the power of these stickers. We had made a project called Protect the Sacred that was really an exercise in just trying to reinsert the word sacred into our vocabulary again. Because by seeing that sticker, by seeing the language Protect the Sacred, one had to ask and answer multiple questions. What is sacred and what is worth protecting? By even seeing it, the work was happening. And I saw like really powerful people I knew having these stickers on the backs of their laptops. And I knew that when they went into big meeting rooms, that all the people that worked for them would see the back of their computer and have to answer all of those questions over and over again through the meetings that they sat in with that leadership. And that was the power of a great sticker.
It's amazing. We are at the bottom of the hour and we are talking about grassroots revolutionary techniques and tools to bring art to the forefront of change. I would like to remind our listeners, which are listening to us live here on KPCR FM 101.9, that they can join us. They can enter our Clubhouse room, RE&CO, Re-Genaissance Co-Amplify. At the end of the hour, we will have both Aaron Huey, Amanda Joy Ravenhill, and our special guest, Amanda Sage, here available for questions and to develop conversations. But before we move on, I would like to just bring a little bit of context, because I've been listening and I know, Aaron, about what you do. I know, Amanda Sage, what you do. And I feel I need to do a little bit of justice to the space and everybody who's lending an ear at the moment as to what it is that makes you people so amazing, why you are my heroes. And I think that if I had to describe that about Amanda Sage very simply, I would say that your brush strokes have brought people together in a unified vision. And obviously it's a vision that transcends you. You work with the Greys, and clearly that is seen throughout, and not only your work, but I think it also permeates into their work and the work of the community around you. So it's very much community driven, but it also drives community. The way that you envision realities and the way that they are becoming realities, both in the stickers and also in the clothes that's being worn and in the aesthetics that define and inform the values, and how those values define and inform the actions, behaviors, and the culture of the people you hang out with. It really is amazing to see you in the vision train as a tribe. And Aaron, I think is completely amazing, because he has taken the language, the format of traditional propaganda, and he's flipped it upside down, and still using the clean lines, the clean colors. He's created a whole format for people to bring their art and mix it with a message, and take that message and rehash it, create derivative works, put them up in visible places, and really allow both the cause and the aesthetics to adopt a mind of their own. And so for me, at least, I think the beauty of having you two people in this space is that I think that if we learned of Amanda's ability to create coherent, cohesive aesthetics that bring people and unite people, and we learned a little bit about, Aaron, your ability to take it and position it in the places that are most seen, I think the Re-Genaissance could be served in a matter of moments.
Choo choo!
Choo choo, yeah. We're serving up a revolution, yes we are. Gonna start with the art. My monologue's over, by the way. I'm just holding the beat, just hoping that somebody's gonna come in and say something smarter than I said just now.
Something that comes to mind for me is the work of Carol Sanford, who's an incredible regenerative leader and teaches leadership and management from this living systems point of view. Her grandparents were of Mohawk heritage, and she learned about living systems from them. And something she talks about a lot is the difference between intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. And it's something that has been touched on throughout our time together here, of just the power of working from one's essence and working from one's, innate capacity and potential. And I think, both Amanda Sage and Aaron do this so well. And art does that. Sometimes it is the lightning rod, as Aaron said earlier, but it's that intrinsic motivation is a completely different feel than, an external reward or, doing something to be pat on the back by someone else. And you see it happening in all these different experiments in economy and experiments in community around us, like Burning Man. It's an economy based on gifting and generosity and people doing things because they want to, rather than because they're going to get rewarded by some outer system. And I think in this time of such massive systems change, being necessary in order for us to have a future that's stable I think that shift towards intrinsic motivation, how can we encourage that in others, encourage that in the various teams we work in our relationships, and I think art and expression and in rewarding that in one another can really be a total game changer, a trim tab, as Bucky would say, a point in a system where the least amount of pressure causes the entire system to change. So curious how that resonates with you all, the intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation of this all.
That just felt so good to hear, because I could see it, and I can see us doing this and playing it out and having others see us playing it out and being like, wow, that looks like it's fun. That looks like it's, so much more nourishing and so much more, there's so much more to be found and to be discovered. And, because it's not about like bottom line, it's something so much richer. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's what we're doing, is like this invitation to see in a different way. And we have to retrain ourselves, and so we need to, instead of just talking about it, we need to do it. And that doing it takes, sometimes we have really big visions, but you have to start somewhere. It's like, well, I don't know how to bring all of this that I have in me onto a canvas or onto a piece of paper or into a book. But if you start somewhere and that's the hardest bit, and then something starts going, something starts flowing. And then others like, oh, wow, that looks like fun too. Can I join in? Mm-hmm. And then when you start doing it together, and you're creating together, and then you just like ignite each other's spirits in a way that we couldn't do alone. Mm-hmm. Power of collaboration.
Right. And it's so critical that we use fun and play so that we can be in our full brain, because climate and so many of these issues that are part of this meta crisis we're in are hyper objects, and they're freaky, and we can't quite put our hands around them, and it shuts us down, and we go just into our amygdala, our base brain, and we're in fight or flight or freeze or appease, and you can't really be creative from there, and you can't really think long term from there. And so evoking that play and that curiosity and that wonder in one another is actually really healing work and enables us to be our full brilliant selves, and shine as bright as this moment is calling for.
I'd like to ask Aaron, there is definitely a very clear method to your madness. It is absolutely brilliant. But it has a lot to do with jamming, with communication hijacking. And jamming, in the traditional communication sense, where somebody's sending a message and you're taking it over. I mean, a lot of the aesthetics that you're using are actually, I don't know if they're, you tell me if I'm wrong, but they seem to be a little bit kind of like Soviet era, or at least they have that kind of propagandist, communist kind of tingy kind of like color, which is a very, very recognizable visual language. But what I'm feeling is if we said previously that the activist kind of hinders his own ability to become an integral part of the system he wants to change because he's reactionary by nature, you're still also playing off a lot of the, previous heritage of visual language and kind of social conventions, even political conventions. So tell me a little bit about your method and how that works, because you're doing a brilliant job, and I think a lot of it has to do with a little bit of this kind of like trickstery, kind of playful, kind of misuse of traditional paradigm. What's the word I'm looking for? Paradigm, foundations or fundamentals.
Well, boy, there was no plan. In the beginning, it was a collaboration with artists like Ernesto Urena and Jessica Sabogal and Shepard Fairey, of course, that their work comes from that kind of brutal, like, informed by the communist propaganda of North Korea and China and the Soviet Union. But really, over time, we kind of had to get out of the way of that, of everything being dominated by that style. And over time, the aesthetic has grown to where now, you know, we went from 3 artists to 10,000 artists. Because there are some stories that can't be told in that hard, brutal language of the propaganda tradition. But the reason we used that initially, it was effective for artists like Shepard Fairey to use that. It stopped people in the streets, and that was the whole idea, that it needed to be the hook that stood out amongst all of the visual noise in an environment and made you stop and ask questions. And then every one of those compasses, every one of those pieces of art had to have a really clear path from that brutal kind of superficial hook into a deeper narrative. And even now we continue that, like, while we'll still use that style, that Shepard Fairey famous style, underneath of that 2 or 3 words and that memified kind of flat image, we're now like making sure that there are layers and layers through things like augmented reality storytelling. When you look at it, the figure in the poster or the sticker or the 100-foot tall mural now turns to you and speaks, and you hear the voice of that leader that brings all those other layers out. So we're still playing with that old style, but trying to bring in more and more layers so that it's not just another meme.
You know, this brings us to a very interesting subject, which I was really hoping to touch on. And it has to do with the idea of intellectual property and creativity that is neither yours or neither mine, that it is co-owned. There's a musicologist which really informed my opinions on music. Alan Lomax. He used to travel the United States with his father, and over a career that spanned, I think, 40 or 50 years between the two of them, they gathered around 80,000, something ridiculous, or maybe more, recordings of just kind of like music that was in the vernacular, music that belonged to the people before it belonged to the record labels. And I have a question to the both of you concerning really borrowing, using, and even in the case, if we take, for example, communist South Korean or Soviet aesthetics, nobody's asking for permission for that, but that's already in the public domain in a sense. And I mean not in the sense that it's intellectual property wise, it's in the public domain, but it's in our minds. We know where it comes from. But then again, we also have all these interesting situations where we don't really know where the aesthetics are coming from. And so they can get misinterpreted and jammed. It becomes like this visual aesthetic orgy of like things coming from the past and really not wanting to obey the clean-cut intellectual property system that we have today. And how does that fit into this breed of activism, artistic activism, that we are promoting at the moment?
Well, this idea of images being co-owned and remixed is a tricky one. I think it is a ripe field to play in for the future of potentially designing images that are made to be remixed. Up to this point, the only part that has been co-owned is distribution. So everything we've ever made is a high-resolution download that you can get right now and move in any form that you want. You just can't sell it. Every single thing we've ever made is at amplifier.org, big enough to print the size of a wall. So there is that open source nature in that, but we have not yet opened up that lane to saying create derivative works from this officially. We've saw things like that happen with like We the People with that campaign, with those iconic images of people remixing. But I think that's an interesting opportunity, actually, to open it up, to design it to be all the way open.
Yeah, I do too. Like there's a project, I was just trying to find it. I think it was called Red Dot, that was started probably a good decade ago or more. And it was an invitation for artists to upload work onto a site. And it was like all mediums too, with the invitation to continue like riffing off of, you know, like this is something I'm sharing into this field. Keep, like, use it, steal it, you know, add to it. And I think like if there is such like this, the whole copyright world, you know, of like, you know, don't steal my thing. There's something that doesn't really fit into the you know, the image of that I see, you know, ongoing. It's like, let's, instead of like the stealing mentality, let's play together, you know, and let's like respect each other and create parameters. But like, there's so much to be shared. There's more than enough to go around. And my experience personally with collaboration has been that I've created some of the most incredible works and had the most fun when working together with others, you know, and being like, well, what can we create through both of us coming together that neither of us would ever create by ourselves, you know?
Yes. And I don't actually want to make
style.
anything alone anymore. I only want to do collaborations.
I love that. You know, and if you can also share each other's language, you have a respect for each other's language, you know, like the way that your color palette, you know, and you have that curiosity for each other, and the and then you go into a dance, you know, how wonderful is it to tango with somebody. And I can't say I'm a proficient tango dancer, but I have had some profound tango moments. You know? Yeah. I mean, it's just so much more fun. And I think we've been trained to be, you know, to have to be successful by ourselves, you know, and that we have to, our name is so important. Our face is so important. Like, this is mine and me, and our language is embedded with it, you know? I mean, we're using it constantly, possessing things and projecting things. And so, I mean, it's like I think it helps break down, I think, the system in a little bit of a way, you know, to open up that field for play. And I think myself, like I haven't done much play in that way of really putting something out there totally free with the invitation to add on. Besides the Vision Train, you know, the Vision Train project is something that I really don't see a full vision of. I can sense it, I can smell it, I can feel it, and I'm interested in what everybody else is, what their train car looks like, you know? And that curiosity will never end, because, you know, everybody's line is different, everybody's expression is different, everybody's way of bringing it out. And if we can, you know, do a little dance and you know, celebrate each other's like expression, you know, that encouragement. You see this in children. You encourage them and tell them like, yes, that's freaking awesome, keep going. You know what that does, rather than, you know, criticizing. And of course there's a place for criticizing, but there's a way to do it too that is encouraging, to grow, encouragement for growth, you know.
I love this conversation. I think it is so interesting. The objective of RE&CO is not only to really present people with regenerative ideas, which I find to be absolutely inspiring, but also talk about co-creation and the fact that, you know, the reality we want to shape is one where everybody has a stake and a responsibility. And I think that now with all these new creative mediums where we're starting to see that technology affords us so many possibilities of remaking, rehashing, just the idea of TikTok where fragments of songs are what are used so that people can be inspired to, you know, to dance or create mini mise-en-scenes of theater. I think we're really looking at a revolution where we will have to really understand that it's not so much about the personal benefits that we will reap from our own artwork, but how we actually drive community with it. And Aaron, that was something that I came up, it was very inspired by. It was like, it's both community driven, but it drives community as well. And I'm wondering how you feel about NFTs and all of this, and how whether technology is something that is actually helping us to bring about kind of this kind of new artistic paradigm, which is both activist and inclusive. Activist, I said activist by doing.
That's all right. You can use activist.
I said it very carefully, but say positive propagandist and inclusive by nature. What do you make of the technologies, guys? What do you think?
I'm kind of teetering on the edge. I've been watching for a long time. I have seen incredible empowerment in really specific case studies of individual artists where I've watched artists that I really respect from like small villages in Indonesia that never had a way to even really sell their work before. It was like, in quotes, just digital. And I'm seeing these people now posting and pictures of their face, which I had never seen, saying, I want to introduce myself because I'm so happy with what has happened in my life because of my ability to sell work as NFTs, that I'm actually able now to take care of my family, and I have collectors. And so I'm seeing very, very positive case studies for this, and the empowerment of artists going from being throwaway workers with one-off, payments to being artist owners that are constantly being rewarded for their creation. I'm seeing, I think there's a lot to be worked out in the environmental impact and of the NFT space, but I think that will be solved, and I see incredible things for artists in this space.
Yes, one of the things that inspires me about the NFT space, and I can't say I've been watching too, I've been listening a lot and waiting for the right time to jump in with the right projects, right? And what inspires me though about this movement that's happening, especially here on Clubhouse, is the community aspect. And this there's something really special that I think has happened because of this medium too, of technology, and because of the pandemic. It's all kind of related in a way, where there is a reallocation. There's like a shift in the tectonic plates, right, of currency, and art is one of those tools to kind of help shift that, and in a way where it is empowering many that did not have that access before. And it's rewarding those that are also stepping up and unafraid to unmute themselves and speak into the wind, and speak their heart. And that's, I've been listening into some of these conversations on Clubhouse, and that is what has impressed me. And I really hope that continues to bloom, that part, that kind of like, and on the other hand, I also see this gold rush, this frenzy, and this gambling, basically, card game thing, which perplexes me because I don't really feel attracted to that in any way. But if we can raise funds, and Aaron, I imagine your projects need endless funds.
I guess they do.
And it's the same, for the projects that I have as well. And I think that if we can really use art, you know, and I don't want to even say the word use, but that's not a bad word. It's a it's a useful word. If we can really activate it through the mission of what's behind it, and develop community through it. And this is what NFTs is about.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what turns me on. Mm-hmm.
And it's about that utility. I think beneath the gambling, like what a lot of people perceive as like the investment gambling of NFT, is like, what I appreciate is that, and what I really love is that it is now calling art currency.
Right.
These
cool.
Pieces that are exchanged are a currency that have an economy around them, and they are tickets now to be involved in an artist's world. And people are being encouraged to help artists build their own economies. So I think that there will be massive like spikes and crashes, but beneath that distraction of the gambling and of all the people that are doing this to make money, like, you know, all of the VCs and the people that are essentially stockbrokers, there are artists using now and calling art currency. And there is a power in that I think will stick no matter what happens with the spikes and crashes ahead, because they will come. That utility of being part of an artist's community, this is just a new way to tokenize that and give it a new language, and build around.
Choo choo!
Choo choo choo. We are 4 minutes away from the end of our show. It's been lovely to have you here. If you're listening to us on Instagram or on the radio, be sure to join us in the RE&CO Clubhouse room. We will at least continue the conversation for a bit. And I'd like to reflect a bit on this itty little bit, you know, on this piece of information. I'm just wondering, the Regenaissance, or the Renaissance, let's go back to the Renaissance, was very much patron-sponsored. And one of the things that I really feel that we need to deal with is with this, not the paradigm, it's the staple of the starving artist, of the person who cannot, you know, really create wealth from the bottom up. You know, even the wealthy artists, like to a great extent, if we're talking about what we saw in Art Basel, where again, people who are playing into this kind of speculative game. I mean, I would like to see a sustainable economy of artists which are actually in charge of the wealth they're creating, especially because I believe that in a world where most of the wealth is at least immaterial, is intellectual property, is brands, is knowledge and things like that, I'm wondering why it is that the artists have done so poorly, and whether this kind of whole idea of, you know, that we have to be as artists, have patrons, and we have to have, you know, somebody to sponsor us, rather than being, you know, really grassroots entrepreneurs which create and manage your own wealth. But I think that's what you were getting at, right, Aaron?
Yeah, I think that there's an opportunity in the new Web3 world to not have to have as many clients and patrons, and to have more community power that does literally build economies like around this work. Yeah, I hope that's coming. I believe it. I'm going to be building on it.
Definitely.
I also think we need to redefine wealth and what it is to be wealthy, because when I was in Miami and, you know, we're going to mansion parties and yacht parties and all of this, nothing against all that, but I do think that the aim is I don't think the aim should be really that lifestyle. I think like the aim of true wealth is health, right? Is a bountiful, beautiful garden, you know, nourishing earth and water, and sufficient housing, right? And places to work and gather. What does that look like? I mean, that's the kind of wealth that I am interested in. Mm-hmm. And
for sure,
there's a reframing, you know? And it's not necessarily saying we're going to call the others out and say this is wrong, but let's just like play with that. Let's play with what it is.
Let's play with what it is.
To experience true health.
Ladies and gentlemen, it has been absolutely lovely having you on the show today. And again, I would like to give my love to Amanda Sage and Aaron Huey, and we are off the air. That was